Hello everyone, this is CounterYolo, bringing you another video talking about Star Trek Online. And due to a lot of questions that I've received in the past couple of weeks, today I'm going to talk about the best missions and operations inside the game to test your Starship for a couple of various types of playstyles inside the game. Overall inside the game, in my opinion, there are 5 different types of things that you would be testing for Starships and stuff. Um, there's tanking, there's mechanics, there's survival, there's DPS, and then there are shuttles. Um, this is in space and ground, so yes, the title is misleading. I'm also going to talk about ground combat inside of this. I feel that it's important to talk about ground because it is an important part of the game, even though most players do not seem to like ground combat that much. I feel it's important to still talk about it. So there'll be links in the description for all 5 of these elements, and I'll be talking about the kind of like least popular to like most important type of stuff inside the game. So first off, of course, I talk about my own assumptions before I go into this. First off, my emphasis is going to be on non-pre-mades because STO is extremely easy with coordination and missions nowadays. It wasn't like that back in the olden days, in which, like, go back 4 or 5 years, you need a lot of coordination inside of missions in order to succeed in them at the hardest difficulty. Nowadays, pre-mades are a lot less common, and so a lot of the balance has to focus towards, well, if you understand how the mission is supposed to go, then you should be able to still complete it regardless. The next point is that I'm not going to be including Foundry missions. Even though they're great and fun and good for testing, because of the instability of the service within the past few months, and expansion is probably going to make it even worse soon, it's not really a place that I'm going to suggest for y'all to go at this point in time. It's just not something that Cryptic is really supporting that much right now. It's unfortunate. I'll get to that in probably a different video as to why that's going to be a bigger problem going forward. But anyway, the last point is the ease of access, because some of, in my opinion, the best missions for certain types of testing are very faction specific in terms of missions. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to our first category. So the first one I'll be talking about is shuttle builds, and of all the playstyles in the game, this is the most neglected of all of them. And as that, there's a reason why there's the occasional shuttle rewards us, just so that those players that like shuttles can actually be able to queue up for those specific missions inside the game. So my recommendation, like if you really want to do super endgame testing of your shuttle build, ideally you're going to be a Romulan Republic captain, and you'll be wanting to play the best defense on elite difficulty. It's only available to Romulan Republic players from the Vengeance story arc. There is a similar mission called Atmospheric Assault. However, it can only go up to advanced difficulty. It's similar, but because you have 4 other captains with you, and it's not on elite difficulty like this one can be, it's quite a bit easier, to be honest. And basically in this mission, so like for me personally, like when I'm going through a lot of missions, like my personal challenge myself is that I'm going to get through the mission without dying. This is one of the hardest missions in the entire game. That if you're a level 65 captain and playing elite difficulty, for you to finish the mission, going through missions by yourself without dying once. I'm sure there's some of you that'll be happy to like list a couple of other missions that I already know about that are potentially harder than this one, but this one is definitely up there. So yeah, that's basically it for this mission. Overall, actually, in terms of the overall Romulan storyline, this is one of my favorite missions. Actually, it's just that it's a little bit grueling because you're probably going to die a few times during the mission. So our next category is endgame tanking testing. The hard part about tanking and testing certain tanking builds is just that you need to know and have a good connection with some of the other DPS players inside the game, which not all of you are going to have access to that. And so some of the other categories later on are also decent ones to kind of like test stuff. The recommendation that I have is Beta Thwart or Elite, especially if you're on console, because a lot of your higher DPS players on console use this mission to test their DPS builds. Just because console players do not have a DPS parser available to them at all, So this is the best mission to be able to test that. And basically, they're just like, okay, how fast did I complete the mission? All right, divide that time into however much basically damage it would take to take out all the enemies, and boom, that's my rough damage per second stat that I have for the mission. For tanking, just simply go into mission with one of those DPS people and have them have a very aggressive build with very little defensive options for them, and see if you can keep them alive during the whole thing. That's really your objective in it. If you can keep them alive during the whole thing without them dying, then you've succeeded. You also could use this mission for just a survival setting and just for you, just against all of them at advanced or elite difficulty, depending upon your build. But in my opinion, there are other TFOs that are a little bit that don't take time to travel to a system to use. So there are other ones that will be better for survival stuff than this, and I'll get to those later on in this video. Next point is learning the mechanics of Star Trek Online. A lot of mechanics have changed over time. In fact, this picture from the STO Wiki is from back when a lot of the icons were quite a bit different, and different scalings for different abilities was quite a bit different as well. Obviously, this is back when the level cap was 50 instead of 65 today, and so there's a lot of stuff that's very different. But anyway, we'll start with ground first, and that is Brotherhood of the Sword. In my opinion, this is the best one for ground combat, for both learning it and for supporting all playstyles inside the game. Because if you're a tank in this mission, if you're a support player in this mission, or if you're a high-end DPS player in this mission, you'll be able to complete this mission very successfully, even at elite difficulty. In fact, this is also a mission that, as long as there's two of you who know what you're doing in this mission, you can actually, like, just by the two of you, complete this mission by yourselves. And actually have the other three players do absolutely nothing, and you would still finish this mission on elite difficulty. It's mainly because, like, in most of the areas, you actually don't have to defeat the enemies in order to be able to progress and finish the mission. Now, if you're doing a random TFO on advanced, you don't even have to worry about the optional objectives in order to complete the mission successfully. So that's also something to keep in mind as well. This is definitely one of the easier ground missions, and so combined with be able to help teach you some of those other things, understand how ground objectives typically work inside the game, because most of the other missions don't really teach you that type of stuff, sadly. They just assume that you know the mission already. But anyway, with that all said, this is my recommendation for ground. But obviously this is a 3A, so we have space as well. For space, it's the defense of Starbase 1. Yes, a lot of you have probably played this mission a lot, but just hear me out. If you're a tank player in the game, this mission is great for you. You help make sure that your allies aren't being attacked, and whenever you're protecting the forward transports leaving the starbase, that they aren't being attacked either. If you're a support player, you can keep your allies alive, and then whenever the transports are leaving, you can just keep on healing them so that they can't die. Great, that's helped support you as well. If you're a DPS player, you can destroy a lot of enemies and try to make sure that they don't even get to the transports in the second phase of the mission. So in essence, it actually does quite well support all of the different playstyles inside the game. It has a appropriate difficulty scaling from normal to advanced to elite, in my opinion. Now, they have been changing that. Like on release, it was fairly broken in that there's a lot of bugs with it. It's fairly balanced now. It's also accessible to all captains really early on in Star Trek Online, and so if you're wanting to learn a lot of mechanics, it's a kind of boring mission, but if you're wanting to learn different mechanics for whatever playstyle that you're wanting, it does help you to do that fairly well and fairly simply. Our number 2 is our maps for DPS builds. I've already mentioned these on the channel before, but for those of you that haven't been paying attention to my audio, yeah, here's the maps for DPS builds, and we'll start with ground first. For ground, there's 2 maps that your DPS channels will want to use for your DPS parsing. The 2 maps is Bug Hunt Elite and Nukar Prime Transmission Tactics Elite. They're both TFOs. I can find a great picture for the Nukar Prime one, but whatever. When it comes down to it, if you're a DPS chaser, this is the ones that you're going to use. There's I think CSM and another one are a couple of parsers that you can use for ground stuff. The reason is because they're very quick missions, straightforward. You kill stuff and then the mission ends. There's some other ground maps in which that's not necessarily the case, and so that's kind of hard. Also, for both of these maps, they both reward you for having an environmental suit, which is why Bug Hunt is also fairly high up there as well. Nuclear Prime was the one for the longest time that was used for DPS players. When Bug Hunt was released, it was also known as fairly similar to this type of playstyle, except a little bit longer. And well, it's a lot of bugs that do a lot of environmental type damage, which environmental suits help protect you from too. So you didn't really have to change your build too much, but it also gave the option for players who didn't want to use an environmental suit to be able to still have a map for them to test their build. For our space stuff, it's obviously against the Borg. These guys haven't scaled well in the game since the level caps have kept on increasing. It's also based upon the fact that you don't have to remodulate your weapons against the Borg in space, even though you do on the ground, which I think is wrong. I think you should have to remodulate your weapons in space combat as well, which I think Encrypted just did that one change. That would make the Borg hard enough to be able to fight. But that's just me saying stuff. A lot of your DPS channels on YouTube, especially ones that are on PC, will use these two particular maps. Infected the Conduit, which is the infected mission for space, also nicknamed ISA. And then there's the Hive Onslaught mission, which on the elite difficulty, Hive Space Elite, because there also is a mission called Into the Hive, which is ground. Back in the super olden days in Star Trek Online, the space and ground missions for like Infected and Hive were actually combined into one larger mission, which like you would start in space and go to ground to go back to space. Like it was a pretty long and epic like TFO, or sorry, they were called Qs, Task Force Qs, whatever. It's been a while, so guys, sorry. But yeah, they were epic and long, and you could randomly get a super awesome piece of equipment from the boss drops. Nowadays, they're split into two separate parts, two separate missions entirely, and so you don't actually have to worry about the ground stuff if you don't want to. Unless, of course, you do random TFOs, in which you still might get put into one of those, and then it's fun to play. Same thing with the ground stuff. They're very quick missions that are straightforward, and you just kill stuff and the mission ends. A lot of your space stuff is unfortunately that way. I wish there's a lot more stuff to it than that, but a lot of the space missions are just that way. And so for our last category, we're going to talk about survivability. So these are the top maps that if you're trying to see if you have a balanced build for survival inside the game, these are the maps that I would recommend for you to test your builds on. For ground, we have minor instabilities. Even your DPS ground channels will say that, yeah, if you can play minor instabilities on Elite without having any risk of dying to you and still do decent DPS, then yeah, you definitely have a good enough build to be able to queue with other DPS people for the other DPS chasing maps. The beginning part of the mission is a timed part of defending some of these transmitter thingies. So, or whatever these things are called. So you can't just burst enemies down and just be done with it. However, a lot of ground stuff has pretty high burst and sustained DPS, so it kind of could. Basically, this map rewards smart builds. You don't have to be the highest DPS person on your team. You just need a smart type of build to make sure that enemies can't kill you. Whether that's making sure that the enemies die really quickly or make sure that the enemies can't attack. It doesn't matter really either type of playstyle that you do, as long as you do one of those types of things, you're going to be able to succeed just fine in these maps. Also, in my opinion, for all the ground maps in the game for endgame content, this is the fairest ground map. If you have a good build, you'll be able to get through advanced just fine. If you don't have a good build and none of your your teams have a good build on advanced, even though you can't fail anything, well, can't fail the mission entirely, a lot of your team might still just leave because they're like, oh, this is going to take forever to finish. Like, the very first time I played minor instabilities on advanced, it took me and my team like over 30 minutes to finish it because we all kept on dying so often. Like, we all kept getting insta-killed. So it took us a long time. That was also why I started learning how to do some stuff better on ground. I made stuff that was manageable, and then recently I've made really good builds, which are on the channel right now. For elites, you do need several good people who know what they're doing in order to finish it, which I think is fair for elite as well. When it comes to space stuff, though, my recommendation is probably one that a lot of your DPS players would not recommend because they don't like the map. And that is Draeneur Gauntlet. So there's a lot of fun, cool stuff with this mission. First off, it rewards sustained survivability. There is a lot of timers for this mission. So like if you burst down an enemy group, another group immediately spawns. So like if you're just someone who keeps trying to burst down enemies and you like it could hurt a lot doing so, you're going to get blown up. And then the thing that you're defending, the satellites, are going to get blown up too. It basically rewards tanks and bruisers inside the game, which by the way is not the meta on STO builds. We did get that brand new Vodwar ship, which basically allows people to be a DPS player and still be kind of a bruiser. I think that's a little bit unbalanced, but the only reason why I don't use the ship is because it doesn't have cruiser commands. If it had command to track fire, I actually would fork out the money and get the ship. But that's just me. Also, the other aspect that makes this map really annoying to a lot of DPS players, it's a random group of enemies that are going to be attacking you for the duration of the map. You can't actually make a build that's specific to a particular enemy type. It's random. It could be the Borg, it could be Klingons, it could be Tholians, it could be the Zenkathi. It could be almost any type of enemy inside the game. Basically, any enemies that have existed, at least at the time of escalation with the Lucari, are all free game of being able to pop up in the Draeneur Gauntlet. So yeah, I feel like that this is a pretty good map for survivability, especially if you're by yourself defending one of the satellites. If you can defend the satellite without dying during both phases, even if the satellite goes down, if you're making sure that the enemies aren't progressing, then you have a decent survival build. Also, as a last point, if you're trying to earn the Lucari 4-piece tanking set, playing this mission on advanced, even if your team utterly fails everything, when the mission completes, you might get like barely any Lucari marks, but you still get the Lucari micro containers. You'll still get one. So if you're trying to earn the Lucari set, this is the best mission as well for that as well. But anyway, that's basically it for this video today. Hopefully those of you all who have been asking me about this stuff during the past week and a half enjoyed this video. And I will continue doing those other videos going over all the different bridge offshore abilities. I will continue that throughout this next week. Hopefully I get them all done. I mean, there's going to be a couple of videos coming out per day for a couple of days in order to get all the rest of them done, but my goal is to try to get the rest of those done too. Which means that my other videos, my other weekly videos are going to be a little bit more basic like this one too. But anyway, thank you all for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.